Part 16. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Jonghu Buletin. Chapter 151. In June, everyone received YS magazine one after another, and then many people posted it on the internet. When you look through the magazine in person, you will find that there is a whole set of photos of Xieting Zhou. Except for some product introductions, they are almost all beautiful and touching, comparable to a photo album. So everyone thinks that 45 yuan can't buy it, and it can't be cheated. Whoever doesn't buy it will lose 100 million. The feast of Yango has begun. YS magazine once again received a batch of orders. Anyway, the supply exceeds the demand. Not only that, several products recommended in the magazine, among which the perfume called Charm, are even discontinued all over the internet. Goods. You know, the price of this perfume is high. Even the bottle is made of diamonds. It was priced at more than 400,000 yuan when the photo was taken, but it was sold out the night the magazine came out. After all, they are the kind of custom-made ones that can be pre-ordered directly, but there are also quotas. The limit is 2,000 worldwide. This number is already a lot, but it still doesn't last a second. There are also Xietings whose pajamas, shirts, and all kinds of them for sale. It was so explosive that no one could even imagine it. Xieting Zhou also received the magazine he had photographed. After opening the page, the exquisite magazine cover showed a photo of a red pajama on the snow. Every photo after opening it was very beautiful. Xieting Zhou himself was very happy. Very satisfied. Others are already looking at the photos secretly. Although everyone can see His Highness the Prince's face every day, in fact His Highness the Prince in the photos has a different kind of charm that makes people feel fascinated. No wonder sometimes photos are also a way of expressing charm. Such photos are worthy of everyone's collection. Even the Dr. Lu Kuei has collected a lot. He came here for something else. He happened to meet Xieting Zhou and was looking through the magazine. He felt that the vampire prince was really down to earth. Your Highness, your magazines are selling very well. Many people in our research office have collected your magazines. He himself had secretly hidden a lot. After all, this was the vampire prince, and thinking of the recent domestic and international situations, he felt that a storm was coming, and everything seemed so tiring. Well, it's very good. I also think this magazine is good. Xieting Zhou agreed with Lu Kuei's words, but then he was a little confused. Why did Dr. Lu come here today? Is there something wrong? Generally speaking, Lu Kuei would go to the Three Treasures Hall for anything, so there must be something going on at this moment. Chu Dingshan immediately retreated with great interest, and then apart from the vampire, Lu Kuei was the only human left in the room. The situation abroad is not very good. Lu Kuei sighed and then said. Before, the country negotiated with other countries and sent out drugs to treat the vampire virus, but in fact there was still great chaos outside. The country has launched a complete net cleanup, blocking all domestic news related to foreign information, but in fact, in addition to our country, vampires are running rampant in other countries abroad. They have controlled the highest levels of human beings, whether they are rich or powerful, and their ambitions are expanding. This matter was only started to be discussed after everyone discovered something was wrong. After all, most vampires in the country just live a comfortable life and do not pursue any freedom or princes and generals. After all, in modern life, you only need what you want. The country can satisfy you. Why do you want to do those weird things? But vampires abroad are different. They often start wars and want to control the world. Aggression is their nature in their flesh and blood. Even if they become vampires, they have not changed. They are crazy and terrifying. We in the Vampire Association have vampires lurking abroad. They have determined that the upper echelons of several countries have been controlled. The vampires have controlled the thinking of these people. Among them, the vampire in country M should be the marquis, and the controlled vampire has become a blood. It is impossible to save slaves. They are mobilizing weapons and even want to launch an attack on the whole world. Now they are still assimilating. If they continue, then everything. Lu Shifen no longer had the previous dissipation. At this time, he was seriously describing everything they had observed. The vampires abroad were so ambitious that they had almost turned the foreign country into a hell. Now there was no one at all during the daytime abroad. All kinds of blood slaves are constantly coming and going at night. As a reminder, it's true that vampires drink blood. In addition to the blood of animals and humans, vampires also suck each other's blood, so those blood slaves will also kill each other. Yes, our country's borders have entered a state of alert, facing the invasion of these foreign enemies at any time, and the above has already given the news. Your Highness, if there are vampires in the world, it cannot be concealed, and the country will make your existence public. Let you deter other countries from making any moves? This time I came here to ask you and see what you think. The people above originally wanted to come by themselves, but because Xieting Zhou didn't seem to like too many people, they sent Lu Kuei to come over and talk about this matter. Now they only know that top foreign vampires have controlled many countries, and will be in the next at least half a year. In time, vampires will completely control foreign countries, and they will become dangerous at home. As for why there is nothing going on right now, it is because a country has such a large population and the number of vampires is still not enough. The rapid increase does not rely on airborne infection, but if it requires a bite or poisoning, then the speed of transmission will naturally not be that fast. After communicating with the vampires of the Vampire Association based on the population, the scientists determined that half a year would be enough time for the whole world to be in chaos. In order to protect their country, they had to push out Xieting Zhou, the vampire prince, to at least scare him. Those scary vampires. Didn't you send me the antidote before? Xieting Zhou did not expect that while the country was peaceful, the country abroad had become the territory of vampires, which was quite subtle. Thinking that the final outcome of this world is destruction, Xieting Zhou felt a little normal. Those antidotes were sent over, but no one expected that vampires had already controlled the top leaders of those countries. As a result, very few antidotes were actually distributed to people, and some wealthy people even hoarded a lot of drugs. In order to protect themselves. Rich people abroad are still different from those in China. Their property laws have led to the continuous accumulation of wealth of these people, from generation to generation. Therefore, many vampires have lived longer and inherited more inheritance, naturally. Having a lot of money, and then having the opportunity to get along with politicians, will gradually conquer those foreign countries. And just like the emperor's quest for immortality in history, the richer foreign people are, the more they are afraid of death. In the past, there was a saying that a rich man who lived to be more than 100 years old had 6 hearts replaced. Now there is with such a magical existence, the rich are even more greedy. Some of the Prince #1 vaccine in the country has also been secretly taken out, which is embarrassing to say the least. Understood. Xieting Zhou understood that this was caused by human greed. People standing at high places would not think about how the people below would survive. They only hoped that they could survive. The existence of this prince can be made public, but not now. There hasn't been any commotion abroad yet, and Xieting Zhou plans to catch them all in one fell swoop. Moreover, he has no need to contribute to humans abroad. He is just a vampire prince who wants to take a rest. Lu Kuei was already happy when he heard that Xieting Zhou was willing to reveal his identity, so he didn't dare to say anything else. Afterwards, he thanked Xieting Zhou for a while and went back to work. Lu Shifeng and Lu Qinhui were also very busy. Occasionally, Lan Ruimen and Lin Yan also had to go on a mission. In the end, Chu Dingshan became the person who accompanied Xieting Zhou every day. Coupled with those people sent by the country, they actually had a good time. In July, when the country was promoting the vampire movie Red Abyss, Xie whose face was glimpsed in the trailer, and everyone immediately forwarded it without thinking. This movie was urgently produced and was intended to be released in time for the Chinese Valentine's Day, so pre-sale began in mid-July. Sure enough, Xie whose face attracted many people to the cinema. This year's Chinese Valentine's Day is different from the past. Everyone saw the huge poster hanging at the entrance of the cinema. The vampire prince wearing a crown looked down at everyone. His golden and purple eyes attracted everyone and made everyone enter the cinema. Although Xie Zhou only had 5 minutes of screen time, which made everyone feel like a fraud, at least everyone in this movie was beautiful, which was pretty good on a day like Chinese Valentine's Day. Xie Zhou also watched the movie with everyone. Although he appeared for 5 minutes, Xie Zhou was very satisfied with his appearance. As expected, the vampire movie Red Abyss has become a dark horse in this batch of movies, and Xie whose face alone makes him crazy. The box office in the first 3 days directly exceeded 300 million, and then it increased every day, with an increase of 100 million a day. It tricked many people into entering the cinema. When it was released, they even got the secret key, which is expected to be played until during the Chinese New Year. The box office in 1 month directly exceeded 3 billion. This is simply a victory for Yang Guo. The director of the Dark Horse crew went crazy and frantically called Xie Zhou to thank him, and even raised the profit share again, arranging a lot of money for Xie Zhou. However, when the other party invited him to continue filming the movie, Xie Zhou refused. He didn't want to take pictures anymore, he thought it was boring. After this time, Xie whose Weibo directly exceeded 80 million fans, all of whom are alive. Every time he opens his eyes, there is a flood of red love floating in the sky, which makes people feel very romantic. And Xie whose name on Weibo was called the Vampire Prince before, and he was said to have a secondary disease, but now everyone is really calling him His Highness Prince Xie Zhou. They would never have thought that His Highness the Prince whom they praised so much would actually be a real vampire. And time has come to the new year. At the end of this year, when I thought I could get through it smoothly, several foreign countries officially disclosed the existence of vampires. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 152. The first thing that appeared on various networks was a video about vampires. The country has now given up regulating foreign networks, and some netizens found those photos and videos from foreign websites. Vampires are rampant in any place in other countries. They either turn humans into blood slaves or coerce and bribe these humans. The screen is full of the rampant vampires and the fear of ordinary people. It seems that it only takes a moment for the chaos and the collapse of order. Websites in various countries began to become chaotic, which made Chinese people who visited some foreign websites feel a little weird. In the end, these photos and videos were brought back to China to see if this thing was real or fake. After all, the situation outside felt like crazy, just like the end of the world in the movie, with vampires with fangs everywhere, and those people had bright red blood on their mouths, which didn't look like ketchup. Netizens who like horror movies really thought that these pictures and videos were fake, but they watched them with relish, thinking that the actors in them were too realistic, and the fear on their faces was really realistic, and the pain after being bitten in the neck by a vampire, and the horror of being sucked dry and becoming a mummy in an instant, made them feel even more excited. After all, who can believe that there are really vampires in this world? The previous vampire virus has been explained in a scientific way, and the country has also found an antidote and vaccine. Now it can be said that there is infinite peace in China, and everyone doesn't think there is anything strange at all. But the atmosphere outside became more and more depressing, and all kinds of information began to become chaotic. Even some foreign works and websites stopped updating. Some companies that had business dealings with foreign countries also discovered the situation abroad. They even received help because they knew that China was safe and wanted to come to China for refuge. At first, everyone just thought that the other party was joking. How could there be such a thing as vampires in this world? But later, people began to panic. Many friends abroad began to lose contact. Then, the more peaceful the surroundings were, the more they felt the terrible storm was coming. And the country is also paying attention to overseas affairs, because these vampires have controlled many high-level humans and transformed them into obedient blood slaves. Therefore, they don't understand what is in other people's minds. Recently, the stealth fighters in China have flown in the flight fields of various countries for countless times. Before, when vampires invaded, many foreign planes suffered, and submarines also lost their endings. It can be said that while the order abroad is collapsing, technology is also collapsing. Just as Xieting Zhou said, because human life is short, more people will devote themselves to science and technology. However, if a certain race has a long lifespan, living for such a long time will make the brain lose power and no longer invent. Looking at the history since ancient times, we can see that the early emperors were all wise and powerful. When they were old in the later period, they would be incompetent and do things that no one could think of. This is life. No one can stay rational for thousands or even tens of thousands of years. Xieting Zhou usually sleeps after being awake for a period of time. Most of his work and rest are based on the lifespan of humans. He sleeps once 100 years, but how long he sleeps in between is not certain. These vampires have greed in their hearts and want to control the world, but they rely on themselves to control it, not technology. Therefore, the outside has been in chaos for a long time. Under the direct surveillance of artificial satellite technology, we can see the messy scenes in various countries. People dare not go out during the day, and blood slaves and vampires are everywhere at night. As for asking for help? Sorry, the upper class was occupied at the beginning, so not only did the countries not ask for help from each other, but even China, the safest country, did not ask for help. The key is that it is a mess everywhere. In order to ensure that its citizens can live well, China has already tried very hard to take care of itself, let alone save the world. How to save it? Humans have no way to deal with vampires. If they use hot weapons, they will not kill the vampires, but everyone. So what China is trying to do is to block the border and not allow any bad vampires to enter the country. In the past 10 months since April, the border has actually been fighting against vampires. It's not that there are no soldiers who have sacrificed, but their sacrifices are not known to the public. They are still heroes that people should respect. All Chinese people within the range of satellite signals received the latest information, and then saw the shocking news in the special evening news. For thousands of years, vampires have always existed in China, and the Vampire Association was established as early as 1,000 years ago. Now vampires are rampant in various countries. Our citizens, please don't panic. The country will work hard to ensure the safety of every citizen, and there are many patriotic vampires in our Vampire Association who will fight for us on the border. The country directly announced the existence of vampires, and then the video was shown in the Vampire Association. All kinds of beautiful men and women were so beautiful that people were dizzy. Then the news began to report on the situation of vampires abroad. When I saw the foreign vampires showing their fangs on the national news and the bloody pictures on the TV, I was no longer able to manage whether the children would be frightened, because China was the safest country in the world. In addition, a special statement is made that vampires do not have the ability to embrace, and cannot transform their relatives and friends into vampires. Generally, they will become blood slaves who have lost their minds and will become monsters. Please do not get too close to vampires after seeing them. The news is being broadcast here, and the latest vampire information is also released on various other news network platforms. For example, vampire level information, vampire combat power information table, and vampire embrace and reproduction, etc. The appearance of these things is to let everyone know that you must not substitute movies and want to fall in love with vampires. Although vampires are active, they are actually corpses and are species isolated from humans. They look young, but in fact they may be your great-grandfather or great-grandmother. Okay. This night is destined to be restless, and the internet is full of noise, but everyone has been listening to Requiem before, and now they don't feel scared. Seeing the chaos abroad is a bit scary. After all, those countries are like being in hell, but China is still peaceful. However, there will also be saints on the internet who ask why they don't rescue other countries. My God! Were they directly besieged? How to rescue? Tell me. Except for China, which now has local vampires protecting everyone, all other countries have fallen. Note that every country on the blue planet has been controlled by vampires. Now, why don't you rescue? Why don't you go to heaven? Go and rescue. It has to be said that there are still many people in this world who have become spirits of relics. They don't do things themselves, but they just move their lips up and down and start pointing fingers at the world with their keyboards. After that, the country announced the list of soldiers who died on the border, which let everyone know how many soldiers protected the people in the past year. And this batch of death lists has tens of thousands, which is tens of thousands of families. How can it not make people feel heartbroken? Now people in China don't say they want to rescue others. They should take care of their own land first. Moreover, those vampires abroad are crazy. What if they invade China? Just 1 month after netizens speculated about this matter, that is, 1 month after the vampire species were made public, the things they imagined came true. On this day, all domestic networks were hijacked, and then a live broadcast room popped up directly from mobile phones and computers. A vampire with frighteningly white skin, fangs, and blonde hair was sitting on the throne, showing a bloody smile to the camera, and there was even blood on his teeth. Humans of China, the world will become a paradise for vampires. You will all be my food and playthings. Submit to me now, and I will forgive all your sins. He announced all this as a matter of course. At this time, his arrogant appearance stunned everyone. Just as everyone was looking at the terrifying appearance of this vampire, who was actually very good looking, they suddenly heard a familiar voice. Kneel down. It was just a calm and relaxed sentence. The vampire duke, who was originally very arrogant, actually knelt on the ground without any effect on his knees. The video was still playing, and everyone could not see the situation inside. They could only see that the nails and fangs of this vampire suddenly grew out, and they looked scary. The eyes turned blood red, looking extremely terrifying. This turned out to be the real appearance of a vampire. Xieting Zhou finally appeared in the picture at this time. When this face kissed by God appeared in the camera, everyone was stunned. Then everyone saw Xieting Zhou floating in the sky, and the vampire kneeling on the ground began to kowtow continuously. For some reason, this scene suddenly made all the humans who watched the live broadcast feel inexplicably relieved. This is Xieting Zhou. He is a star in our country. Is he also a vampire? Suddenly a fan called out, Xieting's whose Weibo name is Vampire Prince, which means, this is not a second-year disease. So, Xieting Zhou is the most powerful vampire prince in the Vampire Association who protects everyone in the country? After the vampire was beaten almost 100 times, his face was already bloody, but Xieting Zhou was still expressionless, looking down at the vampire duke, and the next moment, he stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers. With just a light snap of his fingers, the vampire on the ground couldn't even speak, and began to burn itself, turning into a ball of black powder in the live broadcast room of everyone in the world, truly turning bones and ashes. At this time, Xieting Zhou looked at the camera, his golden purple eyes flashing with flowing golden light. Vampires, listen to my order, those who dare to come to China will be turned into ashes. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin. Chapter 153. This is the first time the world has really seen this vampire prince. He is so radiant. Not to mention the face that seems to have been kissed by God, just his mysterious ability is terrifying. Just through the live broadcast, you seem to be able to feel an inexplicable sense of oppression from this vampire, especially seeing the arrogant vampire Duke kowtow continuously, and finally his face is covered with blood and in an extremely embarrassed state, and then such a powerful vampire instantly turned into dust. What a shocking thing is it? At the moment everyone saw it, other vampires in the world felt the blood suppression from this vampire prince, and they knelt down uncontrollably, while ordinary humans looked at such a vampire as if they saw a savior. The people of China were the most excited, especially those who were originally fans of Xie Zhou. At this moment, they were so excited that they didn't know what to say. In addition to feeling that their lives were saved, they also had a kind of excitement of "Oh my God, the star I follow is actually a hero who saves the world." Next, the live broadcast was not closed. All Chinese people, as well as those who were still alive outside of China and received the network at this time, truly saw what a top vampire was. After dealing with the vampire Duke of Country M, Xie Zhou moved almost instantly. Everyone's camera was almost like being blown by the wind. He was in the White House the last moment, and the next moment he appeared on the streets of R. Then he saw the vampire floating in the sky. The humans who appeared around him at some point had already knelt on the ground and kept kowtowing to the vampire prince. In this way, Xie Zhou dealt with those high-ranking vampires who thought they could control the world one by one in front of the people of the world. Most of these vampires were above viscounts. Some gathered together to fight with them, and some were dealt with before they could react. For Xie Zhou, the abilities of these vampires were the least worth mentioning. Just a snap of the fingers was enough to turn these vampires into ashes. In less than an hour, Xie Zhou traveled through more than a dozen countries and eradicated all the vampires who led the trouble. When these vampires were making trouble at that time, they created a lot of blood slaves. If they played around without the control of vampire blood, these blood slaves would lose their minds. At this moment, China's artificial satellite finally located Xie Zhou and projected all of Xie Zhou's subsequent actions onto all network signals. So everyone saw that the vampire prince just rose into the sky and finally floated above the city. He was still wearing the purple robe he wore when he just woke up, and his black hair fluttered in the wind. The next moment, it was as if something exploded on him, and the waves caused by it began to spread from Xie Zhou to the entire city. People saw a person coming out of the room. This was incredible. This was not a person at all, but a blood slave. Countless blood slaves came out from the hidden darkness and were exposed to the sunlight. When the sunlight fell on them, there was a crazy wailing everywhere, which made people's bones numb. However, the result of these blood slaves was to turn into ashes in the sunlight. On this day, not only did people all over the world know the existence of the vampire prince, but also knew how powerful this vampire prince was. He saved the world with his own strength. From this moment on, no vampire dared to do evil. The vampires of the Chinese Vampire Association also had mixed feelings. After all, Xie Zhou was fortunately close to humans. If he was also the kind of big villain who wanted to destroy the world, they would never be able to win. This was a day that went down in history. Xie Zhou appeared as a savior and saved the people of many countries. China also began to carry out rescue activities for various countries based on humanitarianism after all this was over. But from today, people all over the world know that there is a newly awakened vampire prince in China. Dare to provoke him in the future? And after everything is over? Xieting Zhou returned to China and enjoyed top treatment. The best chefs in the country prepared meals for him. Leaders met with Xieting Zhou one after another. After being busy, they finally calmed down. The internet had already started to explode. Xieting Zhou's Weibo directly exceeded 500 million followers, and it is still increasing at a rate of more than 100,000 per second. There is no way. This time everyone really knows that this star is not a human at all. His name is the Vampire Prince, and he really is the Vampire Prince. Dragonfly, woo 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 woo, Mom, I have made it, the star I chased actually saved the world. Yeah, looking change, don't ask, if you ask, my parents know that I had snatched Xieting Zhou's poster before, but I snatched it away. Now everyone has posted it in their room, and they can't wait to worship it every morning and evening. Xingxin, oh my god, then the world's top vampires will not be in our China in the future, aren't we rising? Hidei, I just feel excited and crazy now. Who knows, saving the world happened right in front of me, I witnessed history. Netizens are still chatting about all sorts of things, but compared to the dire situation abroad, everyone is safe and well protected by China. After knowing that Xieting Zhou is a vampire, people not only do not feel disgusted, but also like him more, because this is a vampire who saved the world. If His Royal Highness did not save the world, they would sooner or later be turned into blood slaves by foreign vampires. It is said in the popularization of vampires that ordinary vampires cannot turn humans into vampires. After this day, China will also take the biggest step towards the world, and because of Xieting Zhou's celebrity status, Xieting Zhou's Weibo fans directly exceeded 1.5 billion 2 months later. This number is real and comes from the attention of people all over the world. It's a pity that this vampire prince seemed to be tired of appearing in front of people, and he never participated in any program again. His songs were listened to over and over again. The movie Dark Red Abyss he filmed was broadcast online worldwide. Although he only appeared for less than 5 minutes, people still kept going to the cinema to see the grace of this vampire prince. Is His Royal Highness still alive now? The child who was listening to his mother's story about the vampire prince saving the world widened his eyes with curiosity. How could he want to sleep at this time? He kept wanting to know about this matter. Mom doesn't know whether His Royal Highness is still alive, but vampires have eternal life. He must be guarding us in a place we can't see. The woman kissed her daughter's forehead gently and gave such an answer. So my dear baby, go to sleep quickly. When you grow up, go to study vampire history research. In this way, you can understand His Royal Highness better. The little girl fell asleep obediently after listening, and the bedside lamp was turned off. Time is always so fast, and 2,000 years have passed in a flash. The times have changed. The appearance of His Royal Highness 2,000 years ago not only saved the world, but also led China to progress in all aspects. Now, except for some of the smallest special countries, almost all of the earth has become China's territory. The previous rescue has made China the most powerful country. What's more, after many vampires died, only the Vampire Association of China still has vampires. Such a big killer is really scary. And His Royal Highness actually promised the medical research at that time to use the blood cells coagulated from His Royal Highness's blood to make a drug that can increase people's age. Now the average age of humans has reached 150 years old, breaking through the miracle of medicine. All this is impossible without His Royal Highness. And just when ordinary people can only learn about His Royal Highness Xieting Zhou in history books, the Vampire Association also gathered together. Lan Ruimen, Lin Yan, Lu Shifeng, and Lu Qinhui, 4 vampires, drank in this bar that belongs only to vampires. In fact, it is a product made of blood and some alcohol. Your Highness seems to be falling asleep. Lan Ruoming looked serious. She had lived for 2,000 years and was no longer the little girl she used to be. After seeing too many deaths and separations, everything seemed to become indifferent. She understood why His Highness felt bored, because the Vampire Association had not changed much in these years, but humans were changing with each passing day. Xin Yunqing and Chu Dingshan were people who would not appear in memory for a long time. Xin Yunqing relied on the money ability given by His Highness to make a great career at that time and fulfilled his pursuit of his dream. Chu Dingshan followed His Highness at that time until he grew old. At that time, His Highness was willing to grant him eternal life, but Chu Dingshan refused. He said that 100 years of his life was enough, and he just told Lin Yan and Lan Ruoming to protect Xieting Zhou well. After his death, His Highness was silent for a long time, and even Lin Yan and Lan Ruoming felt uncomfortable for a long time. But human life is so short for vampires, and this time, it is time for them to say goodbye to His Royal Highness. His Royal Highness may sleep for thousands of years. When he wakes up again, things may have changed and they, the vampires, may not be able to survive. His Royal Highness is tired. He has played all the games he should have played in these years. If he sleeps, I will also sleep. Lu Shifeng also sighed. He was afraid of sleeping since he became a vampire, afraid that he would never wake up. Now, after waking up for more than 3,000 years, he planned to sleep, even if he would never wake up again. Me too. Lu Qinhui was the same. The two smiled at each other, which made Lin Yan and Lan Ruoming, two vampires, a little envious. But after they finished drinking and returned to the villa prepared for His Royal Highness, they found that they could no longer find His Royal Highness. What was missing along with His Royal Highness was the crystal coffin when His Royal Highness woke up. Humans have long been accustomed to coexisting with vampires. Xieting Zhou has played for 2,000 years, and it is time to leave. After the disappearance of Prince Xieting Zhou, many vampires chose to sleep forever. Perhaps one day in the future they will be awakened, perhaps save the world, or have a passionate love affair. Species have never been the source of evil, and vampires can also stand in the sun. They are given the responsibility of saving the world, and they are no longer the souls cursed in the darkness. They save the world, sleep in darkness, and wake up in the light. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 154. In early March, the cold weather has not left yet. Shangjing City is still very cold. People walk on the road, still wearing cotton-padded jackets and down jackets. People coming and going live in this cold concrete city. In Minghui community, Shangjing City, there are many migrant workers living here. Minghui community was originally a village in the city. After the demolition, a lot of money was given to the villagers. After the houses here were built, high-rise buildings were built, but they were not commercial houses. They were used to compensate the people in the village in the city. Everyone was divided according to the number of people at that time, so everyone had a lot of space after the compensation. Some people rented this place out. Over time, this place became a place for people from other cities to settle down. Shangjing City is expensive. The monthly rent within the Third Ring Road is at least 8,000 and 10,000 yuan. The monthly rent here is 5,000 yuan, which is very affordable. Because it is an old floor, the elevator is also old. The courier brother in blue work clothes got out of the elevator according to the address above and came to the door of 1203 on the 12th floor. Ding dong. After ringing the doorbell, someone opened the door soon. It was a tall and handsome man wearing a black round neck sweater. He was quite handsome. Handsome guy, your express delivery. I just called you. Xieting Zhou looked at the boxes of express delivery sent by the other party and stretched out his hand to take it. Thank you. The two did not say a few words, and the courier had already left, leaving Xieting Zhou alone in the room. His girlfriend Wei Qiang went to work. Xieting Zhou directly moved these things to the study and unpacked them, and then revealed the things inside. The things inside were nothing else, but a complete set of ancient costumes. The black brocade robe was also decorated with gold embroidery. Since the popularity of Hanfu, various Hanfu stores have been very busy, and all kinds of clothes are simply gorgeous. For example, the Hanfu in this store, a complete set of Hanfu, several pieces, plus shoes and underwear, is less than 500 yuan. Of course, Xieting Zhou touched it and found that the white lining inside was actually velvet, specially designed to make it warm in winter. In addition to the black brocade robe and the inner lining top and pants, there is also a fur collar and a black cape of the same style, both of which are also embroidered with golden flowers. Xieting Zhou couldn't recognize what the pattern was, but it felt very thick. This alone cost 800 yuan. Although it was not real fur, it was really warm. There was also a golden hand warmer. The fabric under the hand warmer was golden, but it was embroidered with a simple river and mountain picture. There was black fur on both sides. When I put my hand in it, it was indeed very warm. It was made by the same manufacturer as the cape, and it was very warm. After taking these things out and putting them on the table beside him, Xieting Zhou continued to unpack them. A pair of black boots were also unpacked. The velvet-filled long boots can completely wrap the legs. According to the store owner, they can be worn even in temperatures of -7 or 8 degrees. After putting the shoes and clothes together, Xieting Zhou opened another small box and took out a wig that was very well arranged by the store. The black wig was very smooth and smooth. Just wear it according to the store's instructions. Not only that, a white jade crown was also given, and a pair of white jade hairpins were used to fix the wig. Xieting Zhou took the instruction manual and looked at it. Fortunately, he had long hair before, so he was very receptive to combing his hair. Xieting Zhou was really looking forward to the upcoming trip. After unpacking the hair, he saw some of the treasures he bought, which were 3 strings of pearl bracelets and 3 strings of agate bracelets, in black, blue, and red. These were all bought by Xieting Zhou online. After the country's vigorous development, things like pearls and agates are relatively cheap and easy to carry. After unpacking these, he opened another box and found that there was an ancient suitcase inside. Of course, it was an antique made with modern technology. It was completely black and very beautiful. Some things could be put in it, but it shouldn't be needed at this stage. Xieting Zhou thought, took the suitcase aside, and then began to pick up the previous clothes and change clothes. When buying, Xieting Zhou had already informed the merchant in advance, asking them to wash and send them back, so that they could wear them directly. He returned to the bedroom, which was a large double bed, with 2 pillows close together. It was obvious that he had a girlfriend, and the bedroom was also very warm. If you open the closet, you will see Xieting Zhou's girlfriend's clothes. Thinking of his girlfriend Wei Qiang, Xieting Zhou couldn't help laughing, and then he began to change clothes. It must be said that being handsome is a very important thing. When he put on the black ancient costume robe, he immediately had an ancient style and charm. Even with short hair, he looked full of aura. Xieting Zhou dressed up quickly, then sat in the study, and began to adjust the wig with his girlfriend's mirror. According to the store, after putting on the mesh on the head, the wig was fixed on the top of the head. Not to mention, this wig is very smooth, no wonder it costs 3,000 yuan. The most expensive one here is this wig. After putting on the wig, what appeared in the mirror was a cold and handsome man in ancient costume. His long black hair was meticulously combed up, revealing his handsome face. With Xieting Zhou's serious look and slightly upturned phoenix eyes, he gave people a feeling of being unattainable. The white jade crown and white jade hairpin inserted into the wig on the top of the head not only do not feel boring, but also make Xieting Zhou himself add a bit of nobility. After all, black is a very expensive color. After cleaning himself up, Xieting Zhou took out the bracelets in the box and put all the bracelets on both hands. Not only that, he also put on the red agate wrench given by the store on his hands, which looked rich. Pressing. After doing all this, Xieting Zhou put on the same black plush cloak. His whole appearance was very different from before. If his girlfriend Wei Qian came over and saw it, he would definitely be extremely surprised. After putting on all the clothes, he took the golden hand warmer into his hand and inserted his hand into it. Only then did Xieting Zhou speak. "System, you can teleport." "That's right. In this world, the original owner's golden finger has the ability to travel between ancient times and modern times. A golden finger that allows the original owner to travel back and forth through time and space. Host, please prepare, the transmission countdown is starting. 3.2.1 is transmitting." Along with the words of the system, a golden light invisible to others enveloped Xieting Zhou's entire body. After scanning Xieting Zhou up and down, and after confirming that everything on Xieting Zhou's body was what he must use, he began to shuttle slowly. The next moment, if anyone is in the room, they will definitely be scared to death, because they will see Xieting Zhou's figure disappear without a trace. And in another world, in the 27th year of the Yang dynasty, on the edge of the mountain forest not far outside Quijia village, Shuifeng County, Wengxian town, a black figure suddenly appeared there. Fortunately, there were no people around. Otherwise it would really shock people. The transition from modern times to ancient times was only an instant. Xieting Zhou only felt the cold wind blowing on his face, and there was a vast expanse of white snowflakes under his feet. It turned out that at this time in the Great Yang dynasty, it was the season of winter, and winter had just fallen recently. The first snowfall was fortunately not heavy, just as deep as a finger. At this time, Xieting Zhou landed outside Quijia village, which was only 2 kilometers away from Quijia village. It was severely cold in winter, and the ancients had no clothes, so they naturally went out. There are not many people, most of them stay at home. Xieting Zhou had put on a warm sweatshirt before coming, and added layers of clothing on his body, so that Xieting Zhou could not shiver all over from being blown by such a cold wind. Although the sky is bright at the moment, Xieting Zhou doesn't know what time it is here, but the front is completely white, and he can see a small path less than 100 meters down, which seems to lead to a place, so the snowflakes were also trampled. It was impossible to continue standing here. Xieting Zhou raised his feet and walked towards the path ahead. He remembered that he had also played in the ancient world, so he naturally had it at his fingertips. Nowadays, even if I am alone, I still look charming. Even in such a snowy day, walking in the snow is completely like walking on flat ground. I have to say that these shoes bought on Dobayo are good, and I can walk a few steps. Lu felt that his feet were warm, not only that, but also his cloak and hand warmth, which made people feel very comfortable. In this way, Xieting Zhou walked on the path, and then walked along the path for about 10 minutes. He saw the villages in front of him. They were all houses made of wood, with a lot of thatch on them. After the snow, it's also white, and if there wasn't smoke coming out of it at this moment, it would be difficult to spot. Xieting Zhou took a look at the sky and found that the sun was hidden in the clouds, so he couldn't tell the time here. As we walked forward, there were 2 children playing in the snow at the end of the village. After all, no matter how cold the weather was, the children were always busy. When they saw Xieting Zhou's black figure walking over, they were frightened and ran back, mouthing. Ria shouted. "Dad! Mom! Someone is coming! Grandpa! It seems like a noble person is here. The village chief and his family live here at the entrance of the village. They bear the important responsibility of protecting the people of the village. Therefore, if any outsiders come to the village chief will appear immediately." The child ran into the house and jumped into the arms of an old man wearing a blue linen jacket, acting coquettishly towards the old man. "Grandpa, there is a good-looking nobleman outside." The child said that she had frostbite on her face and on her hands, But every child in the village was like this. Even if the winter was too cold, there were many who couldn't stand it. The children of the village chief's family, it's pretty good to be so lively. Noble? What kind of noble? Village chief Kui picked up his grandson. He was still very strong. It had just snowed heavily at this time. Who would come to a remote place like theirs? There really are noble people. Grandpa, you said that noble people are fair and clean, and they look good. And the noble people wear black. Nowadays, the Yang dynasty respects black and purple. How can the black color of the poor people be compared with that of the royal family and officials? The most important thing is that to judge whether a person is a noble person, just look at his appearance. The common people's faces are all dark and sallow, and few are fair and white. Therefore, this fair skin is a complexion that only dignitaries have. As soon as village chief Kui heard that he was clean and fair, he immediately put his grandson on the ground and explained. You guys play in the house first, and grandpa goes out to take a look. So the two children were restrained by their mother. Village chief Kui stood up and walked out, just in time to see Xietingzhou standing at the door of the village. Xietingzhou, who was standing there, was as tall as jade, with a face as white as ice. He was wearing a black cloak, which showed that he was either rich or noble. Village chief Kui was stunned for a moment, then walked over carefully, bending his waist uncontrollably, and said in a flattering voice. I wonder what you are doing in Kajia village? I am the head of Kajia village. If you have any questions, you can leave them to me. I will definitely arrange them properly. He imitated the way those people in the county spoke, but he still felt that he didn't speak well. Xietingzhou was almost 2 heads taller than him. After all, the ancients didn't eat well, so they were not that tall. He stood there with his head down, looking at him with a bit of arrogance. I got lost here. I wonder if I can borrow your precious land to rest for a few days. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 155. Now Xietingzhou plays the role of a lost nobleman. At this moment, he does not take Kajia village, the head of the village, seriously. He is so proud that he puts his hands in his warm hands. He just glances at village chief Kui with his phoenix eyes and frowns, as if he is very dissatisfied with everything in front of him. This is the great Yang dynasty, Xietingzhou knows, and the classes here are even more clearly divided. For someone like Xietingzhou, who looks like a nobleman, even in the village, he must be flattered by the village chief and the head of the village. Coming to this world alone, it is not possible not to arrange a suitable identity for yourself. Of course, my lord, if you don't mind, you can come with me to my house to rest for a while. But my hut is poor, I am afraid I will neglect you, please don't blame me. Village chief Kui still bent over, and when he spoke, he carefully glanced at Xietingzhou. Just this one glance, he was shocked by Xietingzhou's white jade-like face. After retracting his gaze, he looked down and his eyes fell on the corners of Xietingzhou's clothes. He saw that the corners of the clothes were all embroidered with gold edging. The level of sophistication was probably something that even the embroiderers in their county could not make. And the black boots, you can tell at a glance that they are not ordinary things, and they are even decorated with gold thread and pearls. Seeing such a pair of elegant and luxurious shoes, village chief Kui was shocked. He never thought that the most expensive pearls salvaged from the sea were just embellished on the shoes of the noble, which made village chief Kui think that Xietingzhou's status was nobler in his heart. No problem. Xietingzhou acted very indifferent, like a real nobleman. He would not look at such a poor peasant. He had been to ancient times. Compared with the situation in modern times where most people are equal, the ancient people were more straightforward and clearly divided into different classes. If you were an ordinary person alone, then if you went to a small village and met bad people, they would kill you directly and rob you of all your things. But if you were dressed in luxury, These people would naturally guess your identity, dare not offend you, and even try to please you. This was the command of the ancients' survival. After all, a person who looked priceless could never be alone. In the ancient environment, it was necessary to have thousands of manpower and material resources to raise such a great man. If a village moved such a person, once it was investigated, the final result might be the massacre of the village. Therefore, when Xie knew that he had traveled through the great Yang dynasty, he chose the most luxurious black hanfu suit. The whole suit gave people a feeling of elegance, wealth, and elegance. Moreover, because of its unique black color, it gave people a sense of nobility that they dared not look directly at. Even ordinary people would avoid such people. Village chief Kui did not dare to say anything more. It was very cold outside, so he hurriedly took the nobleman into the house, but he did not dare to walk in front. Instead, he chose to walk on the side, slightly bent over and stretched out his hand, making a gesture to invite the nobleman to go first. "Please come in, nobleman." Xie did not say anything and walked inside. Village chief Kui followed Xie to the right, and then carefully followed Xie into the courtyard of his own home, and then walked into the lobby. Village chief Kui's daughters-in-law are all smart. At this time, they have taken the children to the house on the side. They did not dare to come over to disturb the noble guest, and urged their husbands to go over and take a look. Kui Mingshan is the eldest son of Kui village chief. He hurried over from the east house. As soon as he entered the door, he saw his father talking to a nobleman attentively. The nobleman's skin was extremely white, whiter than any woman he had ever seen. He didn't hear the nobleman speak, but he saw the teeth exposed when the nobleman opened her mouth. The whiteness made Kui Mingshan stunned. People like them who dig for food in the fields can't have such beautiful teeth. He was stunned and didn't know whether he should go in or not, and then he heard his father's words. "Mingshan, why don't you come over to see the nobleman?" Frowning at his eldest son who was stunned at the door, village chief Kui was very disappointed. Kui Mingshan also reacted and hurriedly bent over and walked over carefully. In front of the nobleman, they all had to bow their heads. As long as they made the nobleman happy, they would naturally get benefits. If the nobleman was unhappy, they would be afraid of losing their heads. The nobleman in front of him was wearing something that even the most noble officials Kui Mingshan saw in the county didn't wear. Such gorgeous black and black cloak, this is definitely not something that ordinary people can afford. Kui Mingshan greets the nobleman. "The nobleman has come to my humble home. I will prepare a cup of tea. Please forgive me for neglecting the nobleman." Like the way he did in the county, he bent down and bowed his head, then put his hands in front of his chest to make a greeting gesture. Only then did Xie look at Kui Mingshan, and his eyes just swept over him lightly. Yes. He was very frugal with words. The more he did so, the more village chief Kui felt that the person in front of him was extremely noble. He quickly asked his clumsy son to make tea. Fortunately, his daughter-in-law had boiled water before, otherwise the nobleman would not even have a sip of water to drink when he came. "Your Excellency, why don't you sit down first? I'll close the door. It's cold outside, and the wind is howling. It's better to be warm inside." Village chief Kui said this, and was thankful that he had a cold at the beginning of this year, and his family had burned charcoal when it snowed. Otherwise, the Excellency would not come to rest when he came. Xie didn't say anything, so village chief Kui understood that this meant agreement, and quickly closed the door. As expected, the wind and snow outside the window were shut out. It's just that it was extremely cold in Yang dynasty. Even if there was a charcoal fire in the house, it was still very cold. Xie wore thick clothes and walked for more than 2,000 meters. It was okay. Just looking at the clothes of the old man in front of him, it doesn't look like a cotton padded jacket, nor does it look like cotton. It's probably a jacket made of linen. I don't know what's stuffed inside, and it doesn't look very warm. Village Chief Kui closed the door and came back. Sieting Zhou saw the village chief's face covered with weather. When he walked around, the traces of time could be seen on his two old hands, which were even swollen due to winter. There are frost bites on it, thick and swollen, and the appearance of scars is extremely sad. Even though he already knew that the people of the Great Yang dynasty were not living well, Sieting Zhou had never thought of such a bad life. It was much more miserable than what he remembered. Where is this place? Sieting Zhou spoke, and village chief Kui didn't feel anything wrong with this question and answered immediately. Going back to your lord, this is Quijia village, Shuifeng County, Wengxian town. I'm afraid you don't know it. Quijia village is just a small village. There are less than 1,000 people in a village. It's snowing heavily outside and it's very cold. My lord, how to show up outside but with servants following you? After all, it's not like such a noble person has no one to take care of him. Seeing that Sieting Zhou is so clean and spotless, village chief Kui will naturally think that Sieting Zhou is used to being taken care of. And his appearance means that he is a god descending to earth. It's fair to say that he must have been raised by a wealthy family, and he was sitting there with no anger or authority, so that village chief Kui didn't dare to make any mistakes. A few days ago, I went on a study trip to Wengxian town, but I was tracked by gangsters. In order to protect me, my servant disguised himself to lure the enemy, so I came here, fearing that I might cause trouble in Quijia village. Sieting Zhou spoke, making village chief Kui's heart skip a beat. He suddenly felt that he might have welcomed back an extraordinary person, and that someone was following him. If he were to be followed to the village. My servants are all good at fighting 1 against 100. Don't be afraid, village chief. They will definitely not attract thieves into the village. Sieting Zhou's words were extremely sure. I don't know why, but they made people feel inexplicably convinced. The worries that village chief Kui had previously felt were suppressed in his heart. He thought that the village was still very remote, and it had snowed recently, so it shouldn't be possible. There is a thief chasing after him. If their village can save this noble man, won't they be able to prosper in the future? Wealth is easily available, who wouldn't be tempted? What is the noble man saying? I naturally believe in the noble man. Quijia village is located in a remote place. Generally, thieves cannot find it. Please live in the village with peace of mind and wait for rescue. I also read several painting books when I was young. When the road was rough, he drew his sword to help. Now that a noble person is staying at home, Pengpi is in full glory. How can there be hundreds of strong men in the village afraid of a few thieves? Now is the time to celebrate the new year, and all the strong men in the village have returned. Although there are only 1,000 people in Quijia village, they are all strong. Women and men are almost evenly divided, and the children are also working hard to raise them. The village chief is really not afraid of a thief. Village chief Yi, I have nothing to live with now. The winter is long and the houses in the village are dilapidated. This is a pearl bracelet from overseas. The village chief took it in exchange for some silver coins and repaired the village a little bit. That's me. Some thoughts? As he spoke, Sieting Zhou took out his hand from the warm hand. Those fingers that were as white as green onions shocked village chief Kui. He had never seen such beautiful fingers in his life. They were probably several times more beautiful than the woman's hands. But at this moment, these hands casually took off a string of white pearl bracelets from their wrists and threw them on the table. This immediately shocked village chief Kui. My lord, you must not be like this. When I invite you to live in a humble abode, do you want to covet your money? Even if you are willing to live in a humble abode, I am very happy. How can I take away your property? Such expensive pearls. Village chief Kui has seen it once in his life. He saw it when he was in the town. It was a famous golden building. A small pearl was sold for 1,000 taels of silver, With such a string, village chief Kui was simply can't imagine the price. When Xieting Zhou saw village chief Cao like this, he understood that village chief Cao was a kind-hearted but not greedy person, and he felt more at ease. It's not given to you. This thing is only worth a few coins. If you take it and exchange it for coins, you can repair the houses for the people in the village next year, and I can live in the village for a while. He bluntly said something similar to an order, but it made village chief Cao dare not refuse any more. Thinking of what he had just said to reject the noble man, he was even more frightened. At this time, he could only bend down and nod. Yes, it all depends on the nobleman's orders. At this moment, Cao Mingshan, the son of village chief Cao, also came in. He was carrying tea and just put the things on the table when he saw the beautiful pearl bracelet, and his eyes widened in shock. Oh my God, one pearl is worth 1,000 taels, and now it's strung together. Wouldn't it cost at least 10,000 taels of silver to buy it? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 156. The things that belong to noble people are things that ordinary people like them will never see or touch. Although Kui Mingshan was shocked, he continued to pour tea for Xieting Zhou patiently. It was either good tea or tea bought in the town. One tael costs 500 bucks, which is the highest treatment for guests in an environment like this in the village. This thing was bought by village chief Kui before to entertain guests, usually for officials and soldiers from the county. Life has been better in the past 2 years, and there is no more recruitment by the superiors, but this tea has no use. Xieting Zhou looked at a set of black tea sets, but did not drink. Instead, village chief Kui reacted and rushed his son aside. Then he poured tea for Xieting Zhou himself. After pouring it, he also picked up another cup and said, "There are many distinguished guests today, and I don't have anything to entertain you. A cup of tea is not a sign of respect. I would like to offer you a cup first. You can do as you please." As he spoke, he picked up the small teacup and took a few sips. However, he saw that Xieting Zhou had reached out his hand at this moment, and he concluded that Xieting Zhou's identity was anything but ordinary. You must know that the higher the status of the noble, the more people follow him. Even if he eats food from outside, his servants must try it first to make sure it is free of toxins before eating it. It is said that the son of a rich man cannot sit in court. This noble man may have really encountered something, so he came to their village. If it had been in the past, their village would not have been so lucky to meet such a noble man. Xieting Zhou tasted the fragrance of the tea. After just one sip, he tasted that it was a kind of silver mountain tea. Even in the modern world, the price is not something that ordinary people can afford. When he drank it, there was a lingering fragrance in his mouth. It even has the effect of clearing the lungs. Seeing the noble man tasting tea, he did not dislike his family's situation. Village chief Kui did not dare to ask more about Xieting Zhou's situation and just said, "Your Excellency, please rest here first and let me, this silly son of mine, stay with you. If anything happens, Your Excellency, just give him instructions. I will arrange a house for you to stay in. It's bitterly cold in winter and it's about to get dark. I asked my daughter-in-law to make some cakes." After he finished speaking, seeing that Xieting Zhou agreed, he quietly retreated. The pearl bracelet on the table was still there, which made Kui Mingshan understand more that this noble man was more powerful than he thought, and he did not dare to move. For a moment, he just stood there, like a stone pillar. You know, Kui Mingshan's uncle lived in Wengxian town, but he was also a commoner. At that time, he was working as a handyman in Jinlu, and later he got a little promotion. It was also from this uncle that Kui Mingshan learned that the distant over there in the East China Sea, People go to the sea to catch pearls. Even a round pearl is worth 1,000 taels of silver. Now the nobleman's string is of excellent color and soft light, and the whole string is exactly the same in size, so it is naturally even more precious. Just putting it on a simple table at home makes the table look a lot more luxurious. Xie Tingzhou felt Kui Mingshan's shocked look at Pearl, and then glanced at the dark-skinned man next to him, who was probably less than 1.7 meters tall. Tell me about your Quijia village. How dare Kui Mingshan disobey the nobleman's orders? He quickly began to tell the story about Quijia village, including how many people there were in their village, what they did for a living, how much land there was in the village, etc. As the child of the village chief, Kui Mingshan knew these. While Kui Mingshan was serving Xie Tingzhou like a servant inside the house, village chief Kui, who had gone to another room outside, called his daughter-in-law. "Msen, there's a noble person coming to the house now. You can ask Ms. Fang to go to the stove and make some delicious snacks to feed the guests." The Yang dynasty still practiced the habit of not eating after noon, but some wealthy people kept snacks at home. If they were hungry at night, they could have snacks with tea. As for this poor family, they really did not eat after noon. Yes, Daddy and Niang has a silent temperament. She manages the home well and takes care of the children very efficiently. The most important thing is that her father is a cook in a restaurant in Shuifeng County and is good at cooking. As a daughter, An Niang also learned a lot, so village chief Kui spent a lot of effort to hire An Niang for his eldest son. Later, when An Niang got married, the kitchen at home was given to An Niang. Some money was allocated to An Niang every month to make meals for the family, and her life was very comfortable. It must be done more carefully. A noble person has come to the house today, and the house on the east side must be freed up for the noble person to live in. I know that is the house you and Mingshan prepared for Dalin, but now that the noble person is here, the house is full of new things. Yes, let the noble people live in it first. Village chief Kui is not a father-in-law who likes to make things difficult for others. Now that he has to arrange a room, he naturally explains it clearly to An Niang. The things in the east room are all arranged by An Niang's dowry. Village chief Kui doesn't have that old face to occupy other people's things. Everything is done according to Daddy's instructions, and Niang is not stupid. Naturally, she knows that the noble people that Daddy said must be real noble people. If they live in their own homes, they can make their own rooms shine. If it is a son, if I live there in the future, I won't be lucky enough to be a noble person, and I'll be able to honor our ancestors. With the matter settled in this way, village chief Kui went to the house inside again, saw the old wife who was doing embroidery, and snatched the things from the old wife's hands. "Why do you do this when your eyesight is so bad?" Mrs. Kui was also helpless and sighed. "When spring comes, I want to give birth to a baby for the third family. I will do more work now and sell it in the county during the Chinese New Year. I can exchange some money for the third family to buy eggs. Anyway, it is the same at home in winter. Idle. It's too cold outside, it's raining and snowing, and you can't go out." Mrs. Kui also wants to have more income for her family. "No need for that. Our family is lucky today. A distinguished guest came to our home. But I think that distinguished guest doesn't like to be disturbed. You go and tidy up the room that An Niang arranged before, so that the distinguished guest can have a good time. Is there enough charcoal fire in the house for sleeping? Let's put it in the guest's room to prevent him from catching a cold, and put in new quilts as well." Village chief Kui is a very gentle man in front of his wife. When old Mrs. Kui heard this, she nodded immediately. She is a woman who will support her husband all the time. She and village chief Kui have 3 sons and 1 daughter. Now that they are older, their life is considered to be the best in the village. Not bad. "Okay, I'll get ready right now." Old Mrs. Kui didn't ask any questions, and just made arrangements according to the highest level of distinguished guests. The entire Kui family was stirred up because of Xie Tingzhou, and Xie Tingzhou also learned more about Kuijia village from Kui Mingshan. For example, when the weather gets cold, people in Kuijia village usually stay at home and don't go out. Generally, after surviving the winter, it would be in March of the following year that they would slowly start farming or go to work in the city. Of course, both Wengxian Town and Shuifeng County are lively during the Chinese New Year. If there is no heavy snowfall in winter, people from the village will go all the way to go to the market. Shuifeng County is only 2 hours away from the village, but Wengxian County is only 2 hours away from the village. It takes a day to reach Fairy Town. This result also made Xie Tingzhou understand how remote Kuijia village where he was now was, so he was very calm about it. He has traveled through many worlds. In an environment like ancient times, the more arrogant you are, the more respect you will receive. Xie Tingzhou's outfit and his own aura are even more intimidating. Let him say whatever, everyone in the Cao family will believe it. After asking about the situation in winter, Xie Tingzhou knew that it should be October in the Great Yang dynasty, and the first snow of winter had just fallen. If he wanted to get through it, it would take several months. After that, Xie Tingzhou stopped talking, and Kui Mingshan on the side didn't dare to speak either. He just stood there with a slight bend, waiting for the nobleman's orders at any time. Xie Tingzhou didn't feel uncomfortable. He sipped the tea slowly, making it seem as if the room belonged to him. Standing there, Kui Mingshan didn't dare to look at the nobleman, but his eyes couldn't help but fall on the pearl bracelet on the table. It wasn't because he was greedy, but because he had never seen it before. It was the kind of person who sees precious things. Such joy made him unable to take his eyes away. About half an hour later, village chief Kui came back again. This time he brought pastries made by his daughter-in-law. Even this kind of pastry is something that ordinary people cannot eat. After all, the recipes for making pastries are all the secret recipe passed down from the family is something that ordinary people would not make. That is to say, village chief Kui married his son to such a daughter-in-law so that he could eat this precious thing. My lord, this is the sweet-scented osmanthus cake made by my daughter-in-law. It's bitterly cold in winter, so why not taste it while it's hot? It can be said that village chief Kui's heart is extremely sincere. Xie Tingzhou just took one look and understood that village chief Kui is quite shrewd. If he met an ordinary person, he might be greedy and do some bad things, but village chief Kui has seen a lot. He is knowledgeable and understands the impact that leaving a noble person will have on the village in the future. He is so diligent for the future. Thank you, father-in-law. Xie Tingzhou showed a rare gentleness, which made village chief Kui even more delighted. Xie Tingzhou took out a small silver fork from the purse he carried with him. Village chief Kui and his son were even more shocked. The little fork was so exquisitely made that it made the pastry look a bit unattractive. Xie Tingzhou pierced the hot pastry with a fork and took a bite. Sure enough, the sweet-scented osmanthus flavor was rich and sweet. It also had a strong aroma in the mouth and tasted good. Xie Tingzhou raised his eyes and saw the Cao family's father and son looking at him, frowning. I don't like to be watched while I'm eating. When he said this, the two of them didn't dare to look at him. They immediately wanted to bend down and leave to give the nobleman some space. As a result, the next moment, the white pearl bracelet was thrown over, which made village chief Kui startled. He quickly and carefully caught the thrown pearl bracelet in his hand, for fear of falling to the ground. It's worthless, just take it. When Xie Tingzhou said this, the Cao family's father and son did not dare to raise their heads. They carefully held the pearl bracelet and left the front hall. They also carefully closed the door to prevent the wind from entering. After they came out, they didn't know why it was loosened. One breath. The two of them walked to the side room, and Cao Mingshan couldn't control his emotions and lowered his voice excitedly. Dad, the nobleman rewarded you with pearls. This pearl bracelet is probably worth thousands of gold. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Jonghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 157. Quiet. I couldn't help but pat my son. He hadn't gone far along the way and yet he dared to say such words. Was he afraid that the noble would hear him? When the village chief Kui said this, Kui Mingshan stopped talking. The two of them went to the room farthest from Xietingzhou. The room here belonged to the third brother. After the marriage, the third brother and his sister lived in the east and west. The houses here are all vacant, but they are still habitable. After all, he is a village chief, and Chief Kui's house still has many rooms. When the father and son entered the room, village chief Kui carefully took out the pearl bracelet. The cold and smooth texture he had just received made village chief Kui not dare to feel too much. Now he came to the window and carefully he opened the window, and then a cold wind hit, causing the father and son to shrink their necks, and then they both stared at the pearl bracelet in their hands. This pearl bracelet looks even smoother on the messy hands of village chief Kui. Every pearl in this pearl bracelet is round, full and smooth, and each one is exactly the same size. At this time, it is flowing around. The person reluctantly moved away from the light in his eyes. A snowflake blew in with the cold wind and fell on the hand of village chief Kui. At this glance, the pearl was actually whiter and more flawless than the snowflake. Kui Mingshan couldn't help but stretched out his hand and wanted to touch the pearl bracelet in his father's hand, but his father slapped the back of his hand. What are you doing? This is a good thing given by the noble man. Village chief Kui naturally knew the value of this thing, and he was already thinking about how to sell this bracelet for the highest price. He already had a plan in his mind. Dad, can we just take the things given by the nobles? And if this thing is in our house, it won't be a problem. Such a treasure can be regarded as a family heirloom. If it reveals the slightest bit of limelight, it is estimated that their family will be slaughtered by him. After all, this thing is really expensive. What comes out of the water is already valuable. With 1,000 taels of silver, it is already extremely difficult to find pearls of similar quality. However, the pearls on this string of bracelets are all distinct and look exactly the same, and their value must be at least several thousand gold. Everyone in their village could never have as much as a few thousand gold if they worked all their lives. Nonsense. This is a gift from the nobleman to our village, not to our family. The nobleman saw that our village is full of thatched huts and there are no tiles to cover our heads, so he kindly gave this pearl bracelet and asked me to exchange it for some money. Repairs the village. Village chief Kui's eyes lit up when he said this. After all, when the village is good and the harvest is good, he, the village chief, can live a good life. Moreover, this noble man is really precious beyond words. Although his attitude is still high, but in his eyes but one can see that villagers like them are already good people. The noble man is such a good man. I was scared when I saw how serious he was. I never thought that he was actually a soft-hearted person. Kui Mingshan also sighed, thinking about being by the noble man's side, but he didn't even dare to say a word. Unexpectedly, the noble man actually thought about the people in the village. Well, the noble man will stay in our village for a while. This may be the fortune of our village. Tonight, you go out with your second and third brothers and go from door to notify the noble man of his arrival, so that everyone in the village can bring all the good things you can get, and let all the strong men in the village gather at the entrance of the village tomorrow. We need to protect the nobles. Village chief Kui thought about the villain the nobleman said, and although he was a little scared, he thought about the pearl bracelet given by the nobleman. If this thing was taken away, their entire village would be able to live a good life for at least 20 years. With a few thousand taels of gold, they can renovate their entire village, build houses with earthen tiles, and then buy some more land to divide it. With more people and land in the village, life will naturally get better. Village chief Kui is the head of Quijia village, but in fact, the entire Quijia village is a family connected by blood, and they are more or less related to each other. Village Chief Kui is the chief of the Kui family, so naturally any order can be issued. It was very common in ancient times for people to be relatives in a village. After all, if you encounter bandits or a fight between two villages, it will be difficult to deal with it if you are not relatives. The more people a certain clan has, the more advantage it will take. Okay, Dad, I will take the second brother and the third brother there later, but why don't I take the second brother and the third brother to meet the nobleman? As for the nobleman's demeanor, just seeing him once made him fascinated. Kui Mingshan thought that even though he would never live like a nobleman in his life, he was lucky enough just to see him. It's okay. The nobleman needs to rest at home for a while. You will see him sooner or later. Please remind your two younger brothers not to disturb the nobleman. Village Chief Kui believed in his eldest son. The eldest son did things properly and everything was settled. Okay, Dad, this bracelet. Such a bracelet worth tens of thousands of dollars cannot be sold in the county. I am afraid that I have to go to the town to sell it, but how to sell it is another problem. You don't have to worry about this, I have my own arrangements. Village Chief Kui told his son to inform the villagers immediately. It will get dark soon, and it will be difficult to walk at night when it gets dark. Xieting Zhou naturally didn't know what the father and son were talking about. He checked his purse. Not only the purse, he put a lot of things in the pockets of his hanfu. After all, he came to live in ancient times. When he was noble, he had people to serve him. But now Xieting Zhou is still an illegal immigrant, so he has to carry a lot of things by himself. For example, you must have toilet paper, right? For convenience, Xieting Zhou brought disposable wet wipes and some toilet paper. Several packs were in the pockets of his hanfu. The pockets were also hidden. They were inside Xieting Zhou's coat. There were a lot of things in them. According to the so-called back and forth system, as long as it is on the body and integrated with Xieting Zhou, it can be brought over. For example, this bracelet is jewelry in Xieting Zhou's hand. Purses are also a kind of jewelry, and anything can be put in them. Clothing is even simpler. Xieting Zhou wants to wear the clothes himself. What is put in the pockets inside, the system will not be too strict. As long as a large-scale lethal weapon is not put in, the system will turn a blind eye. Anyway, you can't bring things that are beyond the level of ancient science. The tea quickly cooled down, and the Osmanthus cake also cooled down. This Osmanthus cake should be the Osmanthus that was stored before. Even if it is cold now, it is still a delicacy, but Xieting Zhou only ate 2 pieces and stopped eating. He thought about the mountain road he had taken before, and it might not be easy to go to the city in the short term, and he would probably have to check his identity to enter the city. With his identity, I'm afraid he can't get in. So Xieting Zhou planned to deal with the people in this village in winter for the time being, and then take it step by step. After a while, Village Chief Kui thought Xieting Zhou should be tired, so he walked in. My dear, I have prepared a house for you. It's getting dark, why don't I take you to rest? Xieting Zhou nodded. He needed a closed space, so that he could go back when he went back. Afterwards, Village Chief Kui took Xieting Zhou to the newly cleaned room in the east. Although the room was small, it had everything it needed. A bed, tables, chairs, and cabinets were all new. They were made by Village Chief Kui's eldest daughter-in-law, En Niang, with her dowry for her grandson to live in. Even the quilt on the bed was En Niang's dowry, a set of red cotton quilts. This was the bottom of the box dowry that En Niang's father spent a lot of money on for his daughter. In those days, cotton was extremely expensive. Cotton cloth and cotton quilts were only used by nobles. Ordinary people's clothes were linen. This set of quilts was already the most valuable and expensive in the family. After she got married, En Niang was reluctant to cover herself with it, and now it happened to be used on Xieting Zhou. After bringing Sieting-jo to the room, village chief Kui tactfully withdrew. The light outside the window had begun to darken, and Sieting-jo realized that it was probably around 4 or 5 o'clock. Winter days get dark early, and people in the Great Yong dynasty do not eat after noon. Now that it is dark, it is time to rest. Moreover, this room is quite good. There is a charcoal fire in the room, with air vents, and an exquisitely carved toilet. These are all the wisdom of the ancients. As recorded in the records, a good toilet is already very valuable and can be used for decades, and it has no smell when placed in the house. Since you are here, you should make the best of it. Sieting-jo lay down, and he was full of interest in his special trip to the Great Yong dynasty. When he woke up the next morning, it was already bright. The winter morning was freezing cold, but Kui Mingshan, the two sons of the Kui family, had already been waiting at the door of the nobleman with his younger brother, waiting for the nobleman's call. After Sieting-jo got up, he arranged his clothes and headdress. He had heard the noise at the door, so he spoke. "Come in." As expected, the two people outside heard the sound and immediately pushed the door and walked in. Then Kui Mingshan immediately said, "My dear, I have prepared cleansing tools for you. How about moving to the lobby? The house here is too small." For the first time, Kui Mingshan felt that he should have a big room at home so that my dear could live comfortably. Sieting-jo didn't care, so he followed Kui Mingshan to the lobby, but saw the copper basin that had been prepared in the hall. It was filled with boiling hot water. When Sieting-jo came, cold water was added to adapt to the temperature. Kui Mingshan's third brother Kui Zhenshan was holding a cotton towel, which was sent by the villagers last night. He thought that if my dear washed his face in the morning, he must use good things. Such a small piece of cotton cloth would cost hundreds of copper coins. Sieting-jo washed his face and brushed his teeth under the service of the Kui family. Yes, it was a toothbrush made of willow branches, and then stained with some special salt. Brushing teeth and gargling became a habit, which made the Kui family sigh. The noble is the noble. They are also washing their faces and brushing their teeth. When they do it themselves, they look unremarkable, but when the noble does it, it looks like a painting. Even when Mrs. Kui came to visit Sieting-jo, she had to sigh that the noble had a face as beautiful as Yutian's, which was as unattainable as the snow lotus on the iceberg. How could such a noble come to their Kwajia village? It is indeed a blessing for their Kwajia village. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 158. The breakfast is naturally very sumptuous, almost better than what village chief Kui's family eats during the Chinese New Year. These meals include chicken, duck, and fish. They are all good things that the villagers keep at home. Now they are all used to entertain Sieting-jo. It's just a meal. Except for pickles, the table was all filled with meat. Sieting-jo looked helpless. After finally drinking porridge and casually eating some meat and vegetables, he said, "The meals don't need to be so sumptuous. I know the situation in Kwajia village. Are these the meals that the villagers have hoarded for the new year?" Sieting's whose words made village chief Kui admire this noble man even more. After all, he had met some noble men in the past. These noble men were very romantic, but they never wanted to treat the poor people as human beings. Yes, in the eyes of the nobles, these poor people are just livestock, maybe not even livestock. The noble man is right. These things on the table are really the wishes of the people in the village. Last night, I asked my eldest son to take the children to tell the villagers of the noble man's arrival, and that the noble man planned to contribute a sum of money to repair the village. Of course, everyone is very grateful for the house. I have specially sent these meals, and I hope you will not dislike it. Village chief Kui knew that the noble man's home was probably filled with slaves, and he lived a life of calling slaves and maids. In the morning, he saw that the noble man's hair was a little messy, and the people in the family were clumsy, but village chief Kui didn't. I didn't dare to say anything more, and planned to go back to Renyazi in the county to buy some maids to serve the nobles. I have tasted these and understood the thoughts of the people in the village. Xie Zhou didn't say anything, but just said that he knew. Sometimes, if you are too gentle and approachable, people will feel that you have offended you, but now Xie Zhou's coldness is just right. This table of dishes was made by the eldest daughter-in-law, whose father is a chef. It would be fine if placed in a restaurant in the county. But now the nobleman has only eaten a few bites and must be dissatisfied. Village chief Kui plans to let his daughter-in-law do it later. Let's make some appetizing meals, the purpose is to make the noble people eat well. I plan to go to the village to have a look, Xie Zhou said, and village chief Kui immediately understood what he meant. Then let my son serve at your side. If you want to know anything, just ask him. Following village chief Kui's words, the eyes of the three sons were bright. They had never seen such a good-looking nobleman. Even if they had been to the county seat or the largest town, they had never seen such a good-looking person. Now, even if I want to be a guide, I am still eager to give it a try. Yes, Xie Zhou said no more and stood up. Village chief Kui quickly gave his eldest son a wink and asked him to follow him. The other two sons suddenly looked disappointed and pitiful, but village chief Kui still shook his head. Afterwards, when Xie Zhou went out, village chief Kui took his two sons to tidy up the room for the nobleman, which meant sweeping and cleaning. He had to make sure that the nobleman's stay was comfortable at all times. Dad, my wife brought some spices from home before. Why don't you light some spices for your nobles at night, so that your nobles can sleep more comfortably? Spices can only be enjoyed by rich families. This spice is the dowry of the second daughter-in-law. It is understandable that Kui Laoer wants to use it to please the nobles. Okay, then tell your wife that when the house is built, we will arrange a spacious and bright house for your family. As soon as these words came out, Kui Laoer suddenly beamed with joy, but Kui Lao-san did his work silently and did not say a word, but he packed up things neatly, which made village chief Kui very satisfied. Here, the Kui family is cleaning up the room where Xie Zhou lived. They even picked red plums from nowhere and put them in the vase to decorate them, trying to make Xie Zhou's stay comfortable and peaceful. As for Xie Zhou, he had already left the village chief's house and walked out. It seemed to have snowed again last night, and now everything was completely white, and there was no one around. There was a sense of silence with no trace of people around. As I walked on the road, my black boots made a crunching sound on the snowflakes. Quijia village is very poor, and the only good thing is one's heart. Therefore, someone saw the scene outside the house and saw the black shadow in the white snow, and immediately knew that this was what village chief Kui had informed last night, a nobleman who came to their village. The nobleman said that considering how miserable their life was, he wanted to build tile-roofed houses for them. That's why so many people hurriedly delivered all the delicious food they had stored to village chief Kui's house last night, just to please this nobleman, because the nobleman only needs a little bit of the nail cracks to be exposed, which is enough for their village. I haven't had to worry about food and drink for decades. Someone quietly walked out of the house, and then they saw the appearance of the nobleman. Among the white snowflakes, the nobleman was simply different from everyone they saw. He was like a god descending to earth, with a white face. It was a bit whiter than the snow, and the black cloak on his body was even more expensive. When the nobleman walked around, it was hard to see what the gold-trimmed flowers on the clothes were. Anyway, it was them. No one in the village has ever seen it. The people around him looked at him with curiosity and reverence, but Xie Zhou had long been accustomed to such looks. He walked slowly on the snow and was a little surprised to see a patch of red in front of him. Is that Merlin ahead? That's right, in such a small village, there is a whole plum forest at the lower level in front. At this time, the red plum trees reflect the snow, which is a beautiful scene in the world. Looking down from a high place, it is really a different kind of beauty. Yes, noble sir, there is a small plum grove in our village over there. It was planted by the village's doctor grandfather. The doctor saved many people in the past. After his death, he was buried in the plum grove. Every winter, the plum grove blooms very well. The villagers left it here so that the children can enjoy the scenery in winter. Kui Mingshan explained that he still remembered when he was a child, he heard the village doctor grandpa say that people cannot survive in the same white color for a long time. If you keep looking at the white snow in winter, you will become blind over time, so he planted this red plum forest. After that, winter would be like this, and the children would have a place to play. Go down and have a look. Xieting Zhou spoke, really feeling that the scenery in the ancient world was still different from modern times. Modern landscaping is all artificial. How is it like the natural scenery here today? In the white snow, there are only a few red plums dotted, which is already refreshing. Kui Mingshan saw that the road going down was covered with white snow, so he took the initiative to stretch out his arm, hoping that the nobleman could use him as a walking stick. However, Xieting Zhou went down safely and without any embarrassment at all. When the two arrived at the plum grove, they realized that the 3-acre plum grove was still very large. Snowflakes were already on the ground. Some of the red plum trees were blooming stamens and some were flower bones, dotted beautifully with white snow. Xieting Zhou looked at this beautiful scenery and felt that it was really good. The faint fragrance of plum blossoms filled his nose, and for some reason it reminded him of a sentence. How can you get the fragrance of plum blossoms without experiencing a bone-chilling cold? He couldn't help but murmur, but such a low voice fell into Kui Mingshan's ears, and he was stunned for a moment. He seemed to feel for a moment that he could understand the nobleman's words. Looking at the red plums in my eyes, I couldn't help but repeat the nobleman's words in my heart, repeating them several times. Wonderful, he is truly worthy of being a noble person. Even when he sees the plum blossoms, he is so detached. After Xieting Zhou admired the beautiful scenery for a while, he suddenly heard the noisy sounds of children. He turned around and saw several children playing here. They danced and played, and then let the snowflakes on the plum tree fall on their heads and bodies with the petals. Everyone's face was red from the cold, and their fingers were also red, but they did not delay the fun. This was probably the way children played in ancient times. Noisy way. As they were running and making trouble, a child ran towards Xieting Zhou, startling Kui Mingshan behind him. The child bumped into Xieting Zhou, but Xieting Zhou remained motionless like a strong pine tree, borrowing the child. The other children also saw the nobleman wearing a black robe with gold trim at the corners. They were immediately frightened and at a loss. They huddled together like little quails, so cute. The person who bumped into Xieting Zhou was someone else, Kui Mingshan's second son Kui Xiao, which made Kui Mingshan kneel on the ground immediately. Noble sir, I didn't mean to offend you, please show your respect. He pulled his son and knelt down. In the snow, the dark-skinned man was so nervous that he was almost sweating, but the little boy he was pulling smiled at Xieting Zhou with 2 red cheeks on his face. My lord, Grandpa said that you are the most distinguished guest in our village, would you like to give this plum blossom to you? We have been selecting the most beautiful plum blossoms we have found for a long time. Kui Xiao actually took out a plum blossom from behind and handed it over, with bright and innocent eyes. Xieting Zhou looked at the child's sincere smile and did not feel offended at all. He stretched out his hand, and his extremely white fingers, which were almost as green onions, were in sharp contrast to the red and swollen hands of the child. He did not dislike it and took the plum blossom from the child's hand. Kid, what's your name? The plum blossoms he held looked more like the gods mentioned in the painting books. Kui Xiao's eyes lit up, knowing that noble people are the kind of people who can do anything. He immediately said to the nobleman, My name is Kui Xiao. Sir, Can I send you plum blossoms every day? When winter is over, there will still be peach blossoms and pear blossoms in our village. Can I give them to you? I have never seen such a beautiful noble man. After seeing him yesterday, Kui Xiao Xiao felt that he must give plum blossoms to the noble man, because only such beautiful red plums can be worthy of the noble man. I believe that the village doctor has a spirit in heaven, so he will support him. Okay, Xieting Zhou agreed happily. Looking at the child, his heart was extremely complicated. In modern times, a child like this who looks less than 10 years old would still be the treasure of his parents, but now he is extremely well behaved and sensible. Thinking of this, he became interested and said, "Your name is not very good, how about I give you a name?" As soon as these words came out, before Kui Xiao could react, Kui Mingshan immediately pressed his son's head and kowtowed frantically towards Xieting Zhou. "Thank you, sir, for giving my son a name." Kui Xiao Xiao quickly understood the meaning and imitated his father's words. "My lord, thank you for naming me." Kui Xiao Xiao doesn't like this name, but people in the village think that children with cheap names will not be easily taken away by the Lord of Hell. They usually give another name after they are 10 years old. Xieting Zhou looked at Kui Xiao Xiao, who was so smart, thought for a while and said, "Then I will name you Yingxiu, Red Plum Yingxiu, to fulfill your intention of giving me the red plum today. Are you willing?" Kui Xiao, "Oh no, it's Kui Yingxiu now." He was naturally willing, and he kowtowed to the noble man several times with joy. "My lord, I like you very much. Yingxiu kowtows to you and thanks you for giving me the name." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 159. These days, the names in the village are actually randomly chosen. Most of them are similar to Kui Xiaogu's previous name, such as Xiao Gao Gaodan and Goes Hung. Even when they reach adulthood, some may not be able to change their names to good ones. Kui Mingshan's name was changed after he became an adult. His mother asked his uncle in Wengxian town to find a fortune teller to give him this name. He said that the name Mingshan would make Kui Mingshan a man who could stand up to the sky and support the family business, like a mountain. After having such a name, Kui Mingshan thought so in his heart and did so. He has always been filial to his parents, caring for his wife, and taking care of his brothers. He is also very respectable in the village. Moreover, the election of the village chief in the village is a joint choice. After Kui, the village chief, stepped down, Kui Mingshan, who had always helped the villagers to do things, would naturally be the next village chief, shouldering the responsibility of protecting all villagers. In addition to being an official position and a person who can exercise power, the village chief is also a person who needs a strong soul to protect all the weak villagers. Kui Mingshan has always done so. And now, his son also has a name, a new name. Kui Yingxiu, such a nice name immediately reminded Kui Mingshan of the snow-covered land and the red plum trees. He instinctively felt that his son's fate had changed at this moment. Is the red plum reflecting the snow reflecting the red plum or the snow? If the red plum falls into the hands of the noble, will Yingxiu also go with the red plum? For a moment, Kui Mingshan felt happy and sad. He was looking forward to the noble taking his son away, but he was also worried that if his son left him, he would be wronged at such a young age. At this moment, Kui Yingxiu was still smiling happily, not knowing that her parents were already worried. For their children, parents would make all kinds of plans, just like the plan of Kui village chief for Kui Mingshan, and Kui Mingshan for Kui Yingxiu. As a parent, who doesn't want his son to meet a noble and rise to the top in one step? Xieting Zhou didn't care about what these people thought. Looking at the child with frostbite on his hands and face, he said, "What are you doing here? It was cold in winter, and even in the morning when the sun shone, it was still chilly. Although these children were wearing linen jackets, they were actually very cold, otherwise they wouldn't have frozen all over. Looking at plum blossoms. Picking plum blossoms. Xiaogu said he wanted to pick the most beautiful plum blossom for the noble. At this moment, Kui Yingxiu had stood up from the ground with her father. After hearing Xie Ting's question, the children began to answer seriously. When they were playing, they were also looking for beautiful plum blossoms in the plum forest. In the morning, Kui Xiaogu came early to pick plum blossoms, saying that they were for the noble to decorate the room. In the past, picking plum blossoms in the plum forest here in winter was not allowed, but the noble's status was different, so the children came to help. They wanted to choose the most beautiful plum blossom to give to the noble. Because the noble was really beautiful, just like Xiaogu said, he seemed to be a fairy. Otherwise, why would someone look so beautiful? Her skin was as white as a peeled egg, a fairy-like figure that the children had never seen before. So that's it. Xie Tingzhou looked at the sincere answers of these children, and his heart softened. He suddenly remembered that when he opened his purse before, the manager of the Hanfu shop gave him candy in the purse. Thinking of this, he said, "I only need one plum blossom. This tree is full of beautiful red plum blossoms. They are the most beautiful on the branches. You don't have to come here early to pick plum blossoms in the future. It's too cold. Look at you, your hands are frozen red. Are you cold?" The nobleman was so kind and amiable, even more gentle than his mother at home, and his voice was very pleasant, which made the children gather around. Although they wanted to get close, they didn't dare to get too close. They just stood there obediently, looking up at the nobleman. "It's cold, but I'm not cold when I see you. I'm not cold, I like to pick plum blossoms for you. Your Excellency, can I pick peach blossoms for you in spring? I have a peach tree at home, it's so beautiful. And me? I'll pick flowers for you too, I'm not cold, I like you." Children are the most sincere, they don't know how to express their emotions yet, as long as they see something, they will praise it generously. At this moment, surrounded by children, watching these children tacitly keep a distance of 1 meter from me, I just think that the people in Quijia village are well educated. It's a pity that these children are in ancient times. If they were in modern times, I'm afraid they would all be extremely smart. Kui Mingshan, who was standing aside, saw that the noble liked the children, and did not stop him. Listening to the children's childish words, there was a little more smile in his eyes. Xie Tingzhou felt that these children really liked it, took out his purse, and took out candy from it. It was the kind of shiny, small candy wrapped in a layer of cellophane. He smiled at the children, and this smile was more attractive than the plum blossoms in the forest. "Here, stretch out your hands." When he said this, the children immediately stretched out their hands. Although these little hands were red from the cold, they were clean. They had just gone out in the morning, so they were naturally well dressed. In order to find a beautiful plum blossom for the noble man, everyone worked very hard. There were 5 children present, and 2 small colorful candies were placed in the palms of each of them. The candies were really small, about the size of a child's fingernail, but the bright candy wrappers on them were particularly beautiful, which stunned the children. They stared at the things in their hands, not knowing what they were, and did not dare to move them. They only knew that they were gifts from noble people. Xie Tingzhou looked through the bag and found that there were still a few candies in it. He looked at the children who were staring at the candies but did not know what they were, and found them very cute. He took out an orange candy and opened the wrapper in front of everyone. "This is fruit candy. The outer layer is the wrapper, which cannot be eaten. Open the wrapper and eat the candy inside. It is sour and sweet, and you will like it." He opened the orange candy, but did not eat it himself. Instead, he handed it to Kui Yingxiu. Try it and see what it tastes like. The palm of the nobleman's hand is white and tender, even whiter than his mother's. You can tell at a glance that he never does farm work. It looks as beautiful as white jade. Kui Yingxiu looked at the orange candy in the palm of the nobleman's hand, stretched out her hand, and carefully took it. "Thank you, nobleman," he thanked very politely, and then put it in his mouth under the expectant eyes of his friends, and then his eyes suddenly lit up. "That's right. This orange candy tastes like orange," and the sour and sweet taste filled his mouth all at once, making Kui Yingxiu's face suddenly full of surprise. "Sour and sweet, it's a candy I've never eaten before. The candy now is a yellow candy that doesn't look good, unlike this extremely beautiful candy, which tastes so good. Is this the candy that the nobleman often eats?" The other few people also learned to do this, peeled off the candy wrapper, and then couldn't wait to stuff the candy into their mouths, and then everyone tasted different. A bite of candy is enough to make a child happy for the whole day. Each of them tacitly did not throw away the candy wrappers. The candy wrappers in their hands were beautiful and colorful. Under the refraction of the sun, they were a dazzling colorful light, which made people reluctant to throw them away. In the ancient environment, there were not so many colors. Such candy wrappers were enough for people to treasure for a lifetime. Xie Zhou had no place to throw the candy wrappers. After all, the ground was full of snow, and it was not good to throw garbage casually, so he stuffed the candy wrappers into Kui Yingxiu's hands. "Okay, eat the candy and play by yourself. Go home early, don't get sick." As he said this, the children immediately nodded obediently, looking at Xie Zhou with eyes full of admiration, but after thanking Xie Zhou for the candy one by one, the children left together. Xie Zhou and Kui Mingshan were left in the plum forest. Kui Mingshan's heart was beating fast. He felt that his family had really met a nobleman. Just the candy that the nobleman took out just now was something he had never seen in Wengxian town. "I'm afraid that one piece would cost several taels of silver," but the nobleman gave it to the children casually. The nobleman was so kind that they naturally couldn't get too much. They had to serve the nobleman better. When the nobleman's servants came to pick him up, they would have completed their merits. Just when Kui Mingshan was thinking about whether to go to Shuifeng County in a few days to buy cloth for the nobleman to make clothes, he couldn't let the nobleman always wear the same clothes. He heard Xie Zhou's voice. "It's a pity that my piano is not here, but this tree full of red plums. If there is a piano sound, it would be a romantic scene." Secretly wrote down the piano, thinking about asking his father to see if he could buy one in a few days for the nobleman to entertain. Moreover, the noble is so amazing, he can do so many things. Not only can he recite poems, but he can also play the piano. Xie Zhou is enjoying the snow and beauty here, and he doesn't feel cold even though he is wearing thick clothes, but the villagers have already taken action. The most amazing embroiderer in the village has sent over the clothes she made overnight, which are 2 sets of inner clothes and 2 sets of brocade robes. This is collected by the whole village. The inner clothes are made of soft cotton cloth, and the 2 sets of brocade robes are the dowry brought by the richest girl who married from other villages. It is red brocade. Now they are all used to make 2 sets of red slim brocade robes for Xie Zhou to replace. Village chief Kui carefully checked it and was very satisfied when he saw that the corners of the clothes were also beautifully made. Not only that, the villagers also sent all kinds of things for the noble to use. It can be said that they really tried very hard to do good for this noble. When Xie Zhou came back from watching the snow, he saw that the lobby was also decorated with plum blossoms. He didn't know where the white plums were picked from, but the air was filled with a faint plum fragrance, which was quite unique. On the table were 4 color cakes made by Kui Mingshan's wife. She borrowed various materials from the villagers to make 4 color cakes in the shape of plum blossoms, which looked very appetizing. "My dear, it's still early in the afternoon. Why don't you try the cakes made by my daughter-in-law first? Lunch is already being prepared." Village Chief Kui was still very attentive. Xieting Zhou was used to it and sat calmly in the main seat, with a little indifference in his voice. Yes. He took out the silver fork again to taste the cakes, but Kui Mingshan on the side made up his mind in his heart. He must let his son follow this nobleman to leave their Quijia village. The nobleman is so kind. If his son follows the nobleman, he will definitely have a better way out. He must do this. Good man, he has a golden finger. Author, Zhanghu Buletin Jian. Chapter 160. Under the attentive service of the Kui family, Xieting Zhou came for 3 days in a flash. On the night of the third day in Quijia village, Xieting Zhou stood alone in the room prepared for him by the Kui family, and then started the system. I want to go back to the modern world. Xieting Zhou said this in his heart, and the shuttle system between the two realms responded immediately. Starting shuttle, countdown to 3.2.1, shuttle is in progress. If anyone was in this room, they would see a scene that horrified the ancients, that is, Xieting Zhou was struck down by a golden light, then disappeared, and then the whole person disappeared into the air. In the blink of an eye, Xieting Zhou returned to his study. It was night now, and he thought of his girlfriend in the bedroom, and what he had told his girlfriend about the business trip before. Xieting Zhou tried to comfort himself, his girlfriend not angry. The voice of the system suddenly sounded in my mind. Congratulations to the host for starting his first time travel, a special reward positioning system, the host can be positioned next time. Congratulations to the host for completing the first link between two worlds, special reward is a system warehouse of 5 square meters, please check the host. Xieting Zhou was in a good mood when he heard these functions. The 5 square meter system warehouse can also store a lot of things. He has run out of wet wipes and toilet paper in the past 3 days. If he stays here any longer, he really can't stand it. Although he has changed, I got the clothes provided by the village, but I'm really not used to it. Thinking of this, Xieting Zhou took off his black costume and said put it away, only to see that the clothes were completely gone. After putting the wig into the system warehouse, Xieting Zhou became a modern handsome guy again. When he came out of the study, even though his movements were very light, he still woke up the people in the bedroom. Wei Qiang was startled when she heard the sound of someone moving around in the living room. She almost instinctively picked up the electric baton at home. You know, when renting a house outside, you are very afraid of thieves coming, and the conditions here are also very bad. Not very good. He held the electric baton tightly and hid behind the door. Unexpectedly, I heard my boyfriend's voice the next second. Wei Qiang? Are you awake? I'm back. Xieting Zhou's voice came in from outside, and Wei Qiang breathed a sigh of relief. She threw the electric baton aside and opened the bedroom door. When she saw her boyfriend wearing a white V-neck sweater in the hall, she jumped at him. He went over and hugged Xieting Zhou's neck. Brother, you are finally back. You scared me to death just now. She clung to Xieting Zhou's neck and acted like a baby. Xieting Zhou hugged her waist and held her in his arms like a child. Wei Qiang was very short, only 1.6 meters tall. Compared to Xieting Zhou, who was 1.8 meters tall, she looked like a doll. Just let Xieting Zhou rub him. You haven't been at home these days. Are you scared to be alone at home? Are there people bullying you at work? Xieting Zhou hugged Wei Qiang and sat on the sofa, letting Wei Qiang lean on his neck as before. I'm a little scared to be alone at home, but no one will bully me when I go to work. How about the job you went to see? Although I may have to travel frequently, I don't mind. Isn't it said that I can get a salary of 30,000 yuan a month? The two of us hurry up and work hard to make money. If you can buy a house in Shangjing City, bring your parents over and live together, that would be great. Wei Qiang is planning her future life. After her parents passed away, her relatives at home are not close. Wei Qiang lives with the Xie family. Over the years, she has called Xieting Zhou brother, but she has been teased since she was a child that she is Xieting Zhu's child bride. The two have been together since early, and went to college together. Now they live together, but they work in different jobs. Wei Qiang was a cute girl. She found a job in a coffee shop. After working for a year, she was already the foreman. Don't underestimate places like coffee shops. It sounds like being a waiter is not good, but in fact the monthly salary of high-end coffee shops in Shangjing City is quite high. The salary of Wei Qiang, the foreman, is already 20,000 yuan, although he needs to pay the salary himself. Social security, but the salary of 20,000 yuan after tax is really enviable. This is the best and easiest job that Wei Qiang, who studies business management, can find. Don't worry, my brother will work hard to make money and won't let our sister be wronged. Xieting Zhou turned his head and kissed the face buried in his neck, gently and with assurance, making Wei Qiang extra trustful. Even though her boyfriend changed jobs several times after graduation, he didn't save any money at all. Now the rent is paid by Xie's parents, but Wei Qiang doesn't dislike Xieting Zhu's brother at all. She always thinks that the two of them will work hard in Shangjing and then take root and grow. After they bought a house in Shangjing City, they took over their parents from their hometown to live there so that they could enjoy the happiness in the big city. Yeah, brother, I know you can do it. Wei Qiang was a little clingy. She used to stick to Xie's parents, but now she has grown up and sticks to Xieting Zhou. She hugged Xieting Zhou tightly, and her warm breath was on Xieting Zhu's neck as she spoke. Shang Yuyi looked at her boyfriend's fair neck and leaned in for a kiss. You haven't said anything yet. Brother, how's your work going? Have you made arrangements? I don't mind if you go on a business trip. I can accept it like this for 3 days at a time. Wei Qiang suspected that her brother had trouble finding a job before and gave up after working for a while because he was too clingy. This time she didn't see her brother for 3 days. She must be a very well-behaved child, right? The work has been arranged. Earlier, I was on a business trip every 3 days. I may not be able to accompany you at home, but when I am not too busy later, I can accompany you at home every night. Xieting Zhou knew that this system would evolve. Therefore, after positioning, there will be other evolutions in the later stage, so accompanying Wei Qiang is not a problem. Thinking of this, Xieting Zhou looked at Wei Qiang. Wei Qiang, actually I have a system. What Wei Qiang heard was comma. That's right, the complete mosaic made Wei Qiang look confused. Brother, what are you talking about? Wei Qiang's reaction made Xieting Zhou suddenly understand the magical power of the system. The existence of the system is probably impossible to be known by others, and it is like the unlimited black card that he used before, with the ability to block or brainwash others. So this shattered Xieting Zhu's idea of finding more people to help him and help the Great Yang Dynasty by the way. It seems that he can only explore the Great Yang Dynasty step by step and then change the lives of the people there. Brother wants to tell you, didn't you give me your salary before? Guess what brother did with it? Xieting Zhou pinched Wei Qiang's little nose and teased Wei Qiang. It seemed that when encountering anything, as long as he saw this little guy, he would be in a particularly good mood. What? Anyway, brother won't lie to me. I only have my parents and brother. My money is yours, and I am yours too. After her parents died, she had no property, so she was kicked around by her parents' relatives, and no one wanted to raise Wei Qiang. At the beginning, her parents died to save her brother's parents. The Xie family couple came to the Wei family specifically and gave Wei's relatives more than 100,000 yuan to bring Wei Qiang to their own home to raise her, but she still didn't register her. Brother used it to speculate in stocks. Look. Take out the information in the mobile phone and show it to Wei Qiang. Xieting Zhou is still very capable of speculating in stocks, but sometimes he feels that these digital gold coins are meaningless and not fun. The mobile phone text message is the bank's information. Wei Qiang saw that the display on it had changed from the original 50,000 yuan to 400,000 yuan. Wow! 400,000! Brother, you are awesome. How come you are so good at stock trading? In this way, we can save enough for the down payment soon and buy a house in Shangjing City. Wei Qiang was so excited that she hugged Xie Tingzhu's neck and left several kisses on his face, just like a child, so cute. I will definitely buy a house, but I won't use your money. I will buy it for you when I work and make money. Xie Tingzhu coaxed the person in his arms, and his mood was particularly relaxed, but he still couldn't rest, he was a little busy. It was only 8 o'clock in the evening, and he looked at Wei Qiang and said, I have to go on a business trip tomorrow morning, and I have to be busy in the study at night. You go to rest first, and I will coax you to sleep at 10 o'clock, okay, he coaxed Wei Qiang. Although Wei Qiang was clingy, she also knew what to do at the right time. She nodded obediently immediately, and then reluctantly came out of Xie Tingzhu's arms, and then returned to the bedroom to rest and wait for Xie Tingzhu. After Xie Tingzhu went to the study, he first opened Doubao and ordered frantically, and then directly searched for Hanfu stores in the same city. What can I say? Now everyone's business is not good. Even though it's 8 o'clock in the evening, this kind of local shopping is still open, and many local Hanfu merchants have to do live broadcasts at night. 8 o'clock is the hottest time. Xie Tingzhu really found a Hanfu store in the same city on it. It's March now, and the thick Hanfu from earlier is being processed. After all, spring clothes are about to be put on, so Xie Tingzhu found a store that looks good in workmanship, and directly bought several sets of winter Hanfu plus cloaks and shoes of the same color. Within 2 hours, the store will deliver them. Not only that, the store will also send some small gifts of men's jewelry, such as the same hand warmers and purses. After all, Xie Tingzhu directly bought more than 10,000 orders, so everyone is naturally very enthusiastic. This experience in the Great Yang dynasty made Xie Tingzhu realize that some daily necessities are also indispensable. After that, he successively placed orders for wet wipes, toilet paper, razors, frostbite cream, face cream, perfume, etc. Now that he has a space within 5 square meters, these things can be stored in the system warehouse and can be taken out at any time, which is very convenient. Not only that, there are also sharp military knives and electric prods. Xie Tingzhu's use of these can be said to be the pinnacle.